Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. How wonderful to meet you. Let me say a few things first. I make probably 10, maybe hundreds of interviews, but this one is the dearest to my heart because
Oh,
it's so
well.
natural and so genuine and so pure, uh,
Oh,
not motivated by professionals or politicians or scholars or people who are against or for Palestine, but for genuine young people who wanted to know the truth. It's so refreshing. Thank you, Liz McKean, who organized this, and Mary Smith, who seemed to have read a lot about many pages of the book, and Mackenzie said statements which attracted my attention. Two disadvantaged people, and Trey, he actually is from Georgia, but he talked about my father's pioneering education. So that's wonderful. Now I'm going to be quiet and try to answer any questions you may have.
hi. Thank you so much for joining us. It's truly such an honor. We had no idea you would ever see our video. It was, like you said, just like friends getting together and talking about a book because we are all spread out across the US and it's kind of our way of getting together once a month. And your story was really inspiring. Your work is really inspiring. And it's just crazy that you're here.
Why did you select that book, and how did you select it?
Well, we really wanted to choose a memoir for our book club, and we got a list of a bunch of memoirs that we thought would be relevant or would be good stories to hear to expand our horizons. And obviously, with the conflict in Palestine right now, we thought it was really relevant and important to read some of those stories. So then I just started to research like Palestinian memoirs, and yours popped up.
Hmm.
Oh,
Wonderful.
was this your submission, Liz? Because what we usually do is everyone can submit books and then we vote on one that we want to read. So this one ended up being the one that got the most votes that month. But
What is the most surprising thing you found as compared to what you knew before and what you know now?
Um, for me personally, I think that I feel like I've read a lot about the Israel-Palestine conflict, like in and of itself. But I thought that all of your imagery of Palestine before all of that happened was something that was so like beautiful and evocative, just because I feel like that's a part of the history that doesn't always get the spotlight because the spotlight is on the conflict and the history of the conflict and everything. So all of your memories of you being a child and interacting with all of the people that lived under your tribe and everything, I thought was so beautiful to see because it's something that's not seen very often.
I would like to add in, it was really fascinating for me because I've been keeping up pretty consistently with the Palestine conflict after October 7th. So I was very familiar with the tactics that are being used today in propaganda in America and, similar aspects, but I hadn't done much research on the Nakba yet. And your memoir was one of my first introductions to a very detailed firsthand account of the Nakba. And it was shocking to see how the tactics have not changed one bit from the IDF and from
Bravo,
Zionist
bravo.
appeals. That was truly shocking to me because I remember reading, and we mentioned this briefly in our video, but I had found something immediately after our meeting. In your book, you had mentioned that they were rationed to, I believe, 1,600 calories a day. And then later that night, I had read that North Gazans were eating an average of 400 calories a day. And just reading those two comparisons side by side is shocking and really helps me reflect on the current conflict.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. One of the important conclusions which people, I hope, realize now that the 75 years, 76 now years of a Nakba did not stop. It just even taken greater and more violent and more, more bloody version of before. For example, in 1948, the Zionists who came from Europe attacked 530 villages and depopulated them, and they make now the refugees in Palestine, Palestinian refugees, over 9 million. Now, to do that, it's not easy to depopulate 530 cities and villages. You do that by massacres, and they committed very well documented 90 massacres at least, and they created what is called in international law ethnic cleansing, which means I take your land and property and kick you out of it, and it becomes mine. Now, therefore, if I take your land and property and I don't need you, you have to go away. You have to go away. So this is called ethnic cleansing. But what happened is that the Israelis chased the refugees for 76 years wherever they are. They attacked Gaza several times in 1953, 56, 1967. They attacked refugee camps. Even today, if you notice where they attack only refugee camps in Jenin, for example, and before in Sabra and Shatila, because they wanted to eliminate the people who claim their right to return home, you see? And therefore, we say now that the ethnic cleansing in 1948 has now been converted into genocide. I take your land and property, I chase you, you still demand to return home, even you are in a refugee camp, I'll go to refugee camps and kill you there. And therefore, the ethnic cleansing became genocide. So this is the tragic train of events, unfortunately.
Sabra and Shatila, by the way, is in Lebanon. So even they've been hitting refugee camps even in other countries, not just Palestine.
Yeah, I recently picked up and completed a poetry collection by Rami al-Ashek. And he was born in a Palestinian refugee camp in Syria. And his poetry talked a lot about how even like wasn't even born in Palestine, and he still was so deeply affected by the Israeli-Palestine conflict, being in a completely, separate country, and also like just all of the historical ways that Israel has, attacked like Lebanon or Syria or all of the places in area is so unfortunate.
I have a suggestion, being an old man, of course. Now, this great current of sympathy by young people around the world in campuses and so on, it should be converted into a permanent force, a legal force, to change things. It's not enough to feel sorry and make demonstrations and have campus protests and so on. This has to be converted into a legal force, especially in the countries which aid and abet the crimes of Israel. To do that, these young people, in about 10 years' time or less, they should have positions of power wherever they are in their countries. They may become professors, maybe members of parliament, maybe this and that, and they should convert their sympathies and their very pure campaigns for justice into a legal force, because without the support of the United States and with it England and Germany and so on, there will not be 137,000 tons of bombs are being dropped on people. Today, we have almost 200,000 people killed or injured. This is unbelievable in such a short time in front of the whole world to see. So we, all of us, and I hope you too, we must convert this moral force into a legal and actual force to bring justice back. Do you have groups you work with sometimes, or you have links to other societies or groups?
Yes, I'm involved with a few activist groups, but besides voting in our elections and protesting, it kind of feels like a little hopeless because our politicians are so pro-Israel, and there's not really any like pro-Palestine politicians right now. I feel like. Do you want to speak to that, Natalie?
I mean, I think unfortunately, like our politicians kind of do fail, but I think there are a lot of grassroots organizations, you know, in smaller localities that are trying their best to do, you know, fight the good fight. And I think that those grassroots organizations have always been like a focal point of all like resistance and everything. You know, like if you see like the Stonewall riot, like it was small, like local people. And I think that the localizing your resistance in the places that you live allows you to connect with other localized resistances and kind of like coordinate and build basically large networks of people that are willing to do the right thing, or you know, create some type of movement and things like that. I think in Salt Lake, PSL does a lot of good work here, and a lot of just other mutual aid groups. They do a lot of really great work here. Unfortunately, the University of Utah did just like take away its cultural center. So like there's like a whole thing with that. But yeah.
But there are steps in this process. Step number one is recognition of the problem. As you well know, the American people have been kept in the dark about the real situation. As you know, silencing of the voice of justice in Palestine has been very, very strong. The young people in campuses have broken that, but now Zionists are initiating legislation to prevent universities from talking about Palestine, which is unbelievable, unbelievable. No, one thing you should keep in mind, well, actually two. One, as a human being, you don't accept these things. You don't accept injustice. It's a natural instinct in any human being. You don't accept injustice. Second thing, you should not accept American people being mobilized for another cause of injustice, because the AIPAC lobby is mobilizing the politicians to do their bidding, and which is not what the American people want. Of course, the American people are not moving very much because they are not told the truth. That telling the truth, letting the cat out of the bag, is very difficult to put the cat back in the bag. People now know the situation, thanks to this little device called mobile. I mean, in my time, I tell you, out of 530 villages which have been attacked and depopulated, if there were news in the United States about that at the time, probably not more than 1 or 2 or 5 villages. And therefore, we don't have 9 million refugees today. We probably have a few hundred or something, because people in the world, no matter where they are, they have a natural sense of justice, if they know. So step number one by the enemy of justice is to let people not know, to silence them, to frighten them, to threaten them, to blackmail them if they tell the truth. But who pays the price in the end? It's the American people, because they are used as a weapon for injustice. They should not be used as a weapon for injustice. They should not be the paw for injustice, because if there is a reaction, world war, these people, American people, will pay the price of it for a battle they did not choose to enter. So everyone has a duty, not only to do justice, but to prevent injustice. especially done in their name.
That's one thing. Like, I think as an American, like, I know all of my friends who live there, the American, like, they're American, not Palestinian. They talk about their huge college debts and their skyrocketing healthcare, and they pay a lot of taxes on the income they do make. And then meanwhile in Israel, they have free healthcare, free university. I just think, like, for me, like, that, even if I knew nothing over Palestine and I was not personally invested, that alone would, like, get me a little upset. But speaking of AIPAC, there was something recently that said that more than 95% of the AIPAC-backed candidates won the election in the US. And I mean, like, that's like what Dad was saying, step one, step two. I mean, it's gonna take time because they've been doing this for years and years, like decades, right?
And I think that the mess up of and warmongering that the Biden administration has done since being in power has really pushed people more right leaning, unfortunately, and made it even more difficult for, you know, people that are fighting for these, you know, activist causes to basically, like, be reasonable in the conversations that they're having about the future and the changes that we want to make and things.
I actually
But
did
it's
have
got to be done. Got to be done, because really the pursuance of injustice makes everybody guilty or force everybody to pay that price. So it's becoming upon people to say, hey, not in my name. You are committing crime in my name. And if there is vengeance or response, I will pay the price for a crime I did not do. Yeah, I mean, you cause me two things. You commit a crime in my name without my knowledge. And the other thing is that if there is injustice removed and justice restored, I will have to pay reparations for the crimes you have done. In all wars, when there is justice restored, there is reparations, whether mental or educational or financial or educational. Why should you make me pay reparations of all kinds for a crime I did not commit and actually I did not approve of? So it's incumbent upon everybody even to defend themselves against injustice imposed on them.
To your point, I would say that like some of my coworkers or people I know who are smart, well-meaning people, like I'll mention the war in Gaza, and they don't have any clue they don't really understand it, because it seems like when in the media they have to both sides everything, and so there is a big step in just letting, like you said, like letting people know what's going on, because I think that would make a difference, and unfortunately it doesn't seem to be always in the centerpiece of what people are digesting.
One of the things which people should know, when they say hostages must be freed, I agree 100%. Hostages must be freed. Everybody must return to his home free. I agree with that. But who are the hostages? There are 2.3 million Palestinians who are hostages in a place called Gaza Strip. This name did not exist before Israel created that name. What is Gaza Strip? Gaza Strip is the place where 247 villages, people from 247 villages living in southern Palestine, have been driven by 90 massacres in 1948 to be huddled and cornered in a concentration camp called Gaza. Area of Gaza Strip, 365 square kilometers, which is 1.3% of Palestine. Their home, these refugees in Gaza, their home is 50% of Palestine. Imagine people living in the southern half of Palestine, 50%, are driven into 1% in a concentration camp, denied movement, denied access to food and everything, and being attacked all the time. So these are the refugees who are hostages and who should return home. The boys who broke the fence on October 7 have no intention whatsoever except to return home. In my article, Mondo Wise, please look it up, Mondo Wise, I wrote I could have been, if I were younger, one of those people, because they simply broke the fence of the camp trying to return home. They have density of population in Gaza, 8,000 people. The people of 240 towns and villages are gathered in this place at density of 8,000 persons per square kilometers. And who takes their land? Settlers. Settlers who, their density of population, southern Palestine, is only 5 or 6 persons per square kilometer. That means in Gaza, they are 1,000 times more dense, because the southern Palestine is emptied of its people and put in 1% of Palestine, and settlers took their place, almost empty. I tell you one important fact, which you may find very startling. I am born about 3 kilometers from this barbed wire in a place called Nerim, Kibbutz Nerim. Nerim is built on my father's land. I was born there. So when I became refugee in Gaza, they driven me to Gaza, but my home is in a place now called Nerim. Actually, my family, Salman Abu Sitta land, is 50,000 dunams, which is about 6,000 hectares, and they built, the settlers built 4 kibbutz. All of them are on my father's land. Nerim, Ain Hashlusha, Nir Oz, and Magin. If you look at these 4 of them, kibbutz today, this is the land of my family. I'm born there. Rania, my daughter, who is with you now, is the first generation in 12 generations who are not born in their motherland or fatherland. So it is, I mean, it's not only injustice, it is a crime against humanity.
You see the article, you'll also see that the fence, where the fence was for Gaza Strip, is actually not even the correct UN armistice line. It's just that Israel just kept pushing it up like as far as it can, right? So, I mean, a lot of those is not even technically, like it is occupied territory, Palestinian land.
Yes. Just a note in international law. Armistice line, which is the truce signed in 1949, does not give anybody any right on either side of the line. So Israel today has no borders. It says we have no borders. Israel says have no borders. The international, the armistice line is not a border. There is not a single Israeli today who has a title deed in the place where he lives that he has a legal property. Not one, not one, not one. You live in an apartment or a house, your father has a title deed. Not an Israeli living in any piece of land belongs to Palestinian has a title deed. It's all owned by Israel Land Administration and distributes our land to various kibbutz. Not one Israeli can say the land I'm living on, I have a title deed because it belongs to a Palestinian. Have you seen any country in the world where people in the country do not have title deeds of where they live? You, your family must have, I'm sure, everywhere. But no Israeli lives in Israel today has a title deed. They rent from the government of a Palestinian property. Can you imagine that?
Absentees or something, present absentees. Liz, you said you had some, or you had prepared some questions, perhaps?
Oh, yes. Let me get them pulled up.
Okay.
I can go ahead and ask one that I think
yeah,
is a
go
bit
ahead.
relevant to what we were talking about right
Mhm.
now. Let me just find it real quick. Oh, so I was really interested in record keeping. Record keeping family history is something many Americans don't do, primarily because most Americans are unable to trace their family history further than a few generations. What does it look like to preserve the history of your land and your family line? And how does being forcibly removed affect the record keeping process?
Thank you, and thank you, Mary, for a very good question. In 1948, as you, it's a pleasure to talk to you because I don't have to repeat things you have already read. But when I have to leave my home in the middle of the night under the threat of mortars and machine guns, we have to escape for our life. And so the land is taken by Israel, the property is taken by Israel, government of Palestine left behind records of birth, deaths, education, banking, transport, agriculture, health, and so on. All this is seized by Israel. So when we became refugees, we had only the clothes on our back and our memory, and of course our identity. So we tried to recreate that in exile, and a lot of people try to do that. There are many things people do in the last 76 years, and now they build that. And for example, my daughter Rania, who's here, she has to learn about her history from either memory or what we write, and all the documentation is still in the hands of Israel. But luckily, my work in Palestine Land Society, which I hope you have time to look at the website, meant that for 40 years, I'm touring capitals of the world to collect documents of Palestine. In London, where I graduated, for example, I had wealth of information, but let there be no mistake. There is not one door to open and get all the documents. In England, for example, there are so many, you know, military has archives, foreign office has archives, and so on. Then you go to Paris, for example, Bibliothèque Nationale, National Library, had papers since Napoleon. Then you go to Germany. Germany, for example, where I got very, very interesting first aerial surveys of Palestine in 1917. And then, of course, the United Nations have a lot of records. Library of Congress has a lot of records. So we have to reconstruct that. In Palestine Land Society, we produced the Atlas of Palestine, 1917 to 1966. Now it's in the 4th edition, in English, in Arabic, in Spanish, and in Russian. So this is a massive campaign. History did not see it. How people recreated their existence in Palestine for 4,000 years. Let me tell you one thing. For example, when I started to make maps, I looked back to see if there are many maps from before. So we found the British came to Palestine in 1881 to 87, and they did a survey. I got the documents from Britain, which have been in boxes, not open for 150 years. I got those out, and I found that they reported from Palestine part of the story, and they did not part the other part of the story. So we created a new atlas, adding the missing parts which are not reported by the British, and also correcting the data. Then before that, I wanted to know more. So in 1596, the Ottomans ruled Palestine, and we found their tax book And the tax book, they mention the names of villages and towns and localities, how many people live there, what they grow, and how much taxes they owe to pay. So this is another record. And the Crusaders in the year 1100, they came and wrote about the country of Palestine. They have description of who these people are and so on, like that. But more than that, in the year 300, that's 300 years when Palestine became Christian during the Byzantine Empire, there is a Palestinian bishop called Eusebius. He lived in a town called Caesarea, which is still existing, under the name existing today. And we found, not me, but other archaeologists and so on, but I located that, found that he made a map of Palestine in the year 300, in the year 313. And it's called Omonostikon. So I checked the names of the villages he wrote and how much distance they are from each other. By the way, he did that because he wanted to help Christian pilgrims going to Jerusalem. You know where they go, how many hours a horse will take from one place to another, and so on. And the list of the names of villages he has is remarkable because they are the same names we have in my atlas today, 1700 years later. Same names, Rama, Bethlehem, and there's the same name and same location. So which country in Europe has a complete record of its history for 2,000 years more than Palestine? Not one, not one, not one. And all documented, which actually means it's such an injustice to uproot people who lived in their country for thousands of years. And if you exclude Palestinians from Palestine, then there are no Lebanese in Lebanon, and there are no Egyptians in Egypt, and there are no Jordanians in Jordan. So you cannot think of Palestine as a bald spot and only reserved for the Ashkenazis from Eastern Europe to come and live to call themselves the original Palestinians. And we, who can trace it 2,000 years, are the original Palestinians. I mean, I don't just defies any sense. Any sense.
Question. With all of the universities in Gaza that have been destroyed over the past 6-8 months, what do you think the recovery effort for all of that historical information would look like? Are you involved in any of that kind of process, or know anybody that is involved in that kind of process of recovering all of that information that has been recently lost?
Thank you again for this good question. Many universities buildings have been destroyed. We know that. And of course, no operation of any university is taking place. According to published figures, about 170 professors have been killed, including the president of the biggest university, Islamic University of Gaza. He is killed. I know of individuals in touch with me, professors who are still alive, but they are living in a tent, moving from one side to another till today. The process of rebuilding the universities is part of a huge project to rebuild all of Gaza. I told you about we have a competition in England about reconstruction of Palestinian villages. The British jury, who are architects, have started a campaign called A4F, that's Architects for Palestine, capital A, number 4, G for Gaza. And they have a group so far of 1,000 architects around the world who are ready to lend their services free for the construction of Gaza. this is a huge project, but it is doable. It's certainly doable. What it needs, two things. One, Israel should leave Gaza forever. Two, funds to building. In all previous wars, the person or the group or the country which caused the damage must pay reparations. Now, if United States insist, Israel should pay reparations. But the least thing United States should do, which is very easy, not to spend $3.8 billion paid to Israel every year. Very simple. You are taxpayers, say, no, send my money to rebuild Gaza. Very simple. Why should you use my money, taxpayers' money, in order to create crimes against humanity? Now, look, you know everything. I don't need to repeat. But imagine that two world courts, International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, are bringing Israelis to court, and they are not brought in because the support given by the United States. The United Nations General Assembly voted 3 times by 165 countries against the United States, which voted against it. I mean, this is in your name, in your name. There is an American politician, member of Congress, he passed away, called Paul Findley. Paul Findley. Please write his name. And he passed away, but he wrote a book, Those Who Dare to Speak. They hounded him, but he managed to write Those Who Dare to Speak. Paul Findley.
I think a big part of, changing our politicians and getting legislation through that's pro-Palestine is, as Trey was saying, changing the minds of the general population, which at this point is very either misinformed or committed to misunderstanding. Do you have any advice when you're speaking to people who either don't care or are affected by the mass politicalization of almost everything, even like basic human rights?
Very simple advice, Liz. You know that. Seek knowledge. Seek knowledge. Don't be persuaded by black propaganda. Seek knowledge. And there are people in the United States who seek knowledge. For example, people I know very well. In 1948, they came to help Palestinians, called the Quakers, American Friends Service Committee. The Quakers came to Gaza in October 1948 to help the refugees before UNRWA, before the United Nations. And I remember them very, very well. They are very kind-hearted people. By the way, the refugee camp in Gaza is built by them, right? So there is that. There is the Institute of Middle East Understanding, for example. But homegrown societies should spring up everywhere. Just say, don't do crimes in my name. That's all. I don't want you to go and fight for me. Just don't kill people in my name. It's simple. It's simple. Don't hide information from me. You know, the International Court of Justice has a legal base. It's called the Rome Statute of 1998, if I remember. Article 25 of this institute, paragraph B and C, says the following: the one who is war criminal is not only the soldier who shoots, not only the officer who ordered him to shoot, not only the government who orders the officer to shoot, it is the criminal is the one who seize a crime and be silent. Aiding and abetting by silence, according to International Criminal Court, is a war crime. Imagine if we apply that now.
But to follow the advice to seek knowledge, I think it was Daniel Mate, the son of Gabor Mate, who I love what he said, that when you read about and you fully seek knowledge, the door swings one way. The door swings only one way. Like, you will not have a you'll not have a Palestinian or a pro-Palestinian reading about the Zionist story and then be on the right. The door swings only the other way. It's the ones who've had the veil lifted.
Yes. One word I hear very often, the word conflict. It's not a conflict. It's an invasion by foreigners from another country across the seas, came to take over the land of people who lived there for thousands of years and made them refugees. Not only that, but the criminal who committed that crime is claiming to be the just party. And the party who defends themselves did not go overseas anywhere defending themselves are called terrorists. They are the bad people. Imagine, I mean, this is one big result of the black propaganda, to make the criminal the good person and the victim to be the bad person. And it is logical, actually, in all wars, that you don't kill anybody who you think is good. You have first to smear him, to call him a criminal. He's bad. And therefore, if you kill him, you are the good guy, and he's the bad guy, by reversing roles. But if the victim doesn't have a PAC, doesn't have CNN, doesn't have a whole army of MPs, what can he do? He fights like he does now, desperate. Imagine 270 days, people who have no air force, no artillery, no power, no water, no food, still saying, we resist. This is our home. We cannot surrender. Imagine that. It's a heroic struggle. And all what they want is what I have written in Mondo's Wise article, just to go home across the barbed wire.
Something that kind of goes with what you were saying about like the door only swings one way. I read an interesting email exchange between you and Rabbi Michael Lerner, where he asked you to have a roundtable discussion about your memoir. And so how do you prepare yourself for these like debates and discussions with known Zionists or people that, you know, are committed to misunderstanding you?
Yes, that was many years ago. When people like Lerner claim to be a prophet of peace and you know, and people don't know the other side. So I wanted to make people know the other side. But there is a more interesting one. Please look it up in Mondo Wise. It's entitled a dialogue or discussion between a refugee and a terrorist. Who is the terrorist? Uri Avnery. Uri Avnery is much more well-known. He passed away recently. More well-known than Lerner, Rabbi Lerner. And he was actually a terrorist. He was member of the Irgun, which was described by the British to be a terrorist, committing many crimes like Deir Yassin and so on. But in later life, when he got gray hairs and so on, he said, no, we should not do that. So he was called Prophet of Peace, Prophet of Peace. And I had exchange of letters between me and him, and it's published in Mondo Wise. It's called Dialogue Between a Refugee and a Terrorist. He is the terrorist, I'm a refugee. But the interesting thing is, two things I want to tell you. I met him in a debate in the United Nations, UNESCO, some 10 years ago in Paris. And after the debate, United Nations, he said, we cannot we cannot finish this now. Why don't we have dinner together tonight, privately, you and I? So it's fine. Let's have dinner together. We had dinner together, and during the dinner, I said, Uri, assume that I have an apartment next door to your apartment. It's my apartment, and the next door is your apartment. Do you mind? Do you agree that I return to my apartment next door to you? He said, no, certainly not. I said, I beg your pardon? You call yourself prophet of peace, and you deny me the right to return to my apartment, who's next to your apartment? What would you say if you have an apartment in Paris, and a Parisian guy said, I don't want a Jew to be next to be my neighbor? He said, I'll make a big fuss. How could a Parisian do that? He said, yeah, a Parisian, you deny me the right to return to my apartment next to you. I'm not saying you leave the apartment. No, I say I go back to my apartment next to you. So he didn't. This is one point. And I told him, in the correspondence you find it. I said, Yuri, you are a coward. I said, what do you mean? I am a fighter. Yes, you are a coward. You say that the Germans have done these things to you, terrible things. Why do you leave them and run away and go to people who have done you no harm? You kill them, take your home. If you were a brave person, you fight the people who made you bad things and created bad things for me. That's the honorable things to do. We Palestinians do that. We fight the people who came to take our homes. We don't go to Indonesia or Malta or someplace to fight them. Why did you fight and kill people who have done you no harm, whom you didn't know about them even before, and you don't turn against the people who actually made you whatever you say? He could not answer that. I said, you call yourself a fighter, and you are a coward, because courageous people fight the people who did them the harm, not go to another place where you find simple people who don't know about you and go and kill them and take their place. It is the correspondence with the Uri Avenue is Mondoweiss. Does anybody know the newspaper Mondoweiss?
Yeah, they found it. It's in the chats. They found it.
Yeah, Mondoweiss is run by Jewish Americans who are against Zionism. So that's a good lesson for everybody. That and now actually there are many, many more Jews who are publicly against Israel. Before they were scared to death. Now the blood of innocent people made them a little more courageous. Can I say once again, I'm so delighted talking to you, because you're so fresh and so genuine. I said again, I speak in universities, even sometimes United Nations and so on. It's different. You are different. You are genuine. You are true. You are honest. You are quote unquote. You are people, genuine people. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Please
you so much.
Gain more
Thank
friends.
you.
Gain more friends. I hope you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shall I say bye-bye now? Thank you. All right.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to leave us on?
Well,
assuming that the people watching this are laymen.
Are laymen. Yeah.
Simple thing. Seek and you will find. Seek truth and you will find it.
Actually,
Go.
probably if they're laymen, they will ask, well, that was a long time ago. What can be done now? How can we solve this now? And my dad's research has shown that, that even, first of all, that just because someone got away with robbing and stealing doesn't mean that, you know, that should be given, right? But even with that, Dad has spent years and years, and he's shown that 88% of the Israelis today live in only about 10% of Israel. And so, like, you can give the right of return to every Palestinian to go back to his village, and then in the areas of like Haifa, like my mom is from Haifa, so in those cities there are a lot more Israelis and Jewish people there as well. So like, we don't even have to tell them, okay, get out. Like, they don't have to be displaced. You just put like a 50-year leasehold, right, on my mom's building, which is still there. Her villa is still there. So there doesn't even have to be a displacement of one Israeli. It's just that you have to. Sorry, now my phone's ringing. The return of every Palestinian does not have to mean anything, because the others always say, oh no, but what are you going to do? You're gonna wipe us out, you're gonna make us go away, and you know, like it's just like in London, you have so many nationalities living together and they all have their title deed, and you know, if Germany went and took over London, the government's different, but you would still have your deed to your land, right?
Yeah.
I'm more eloquent than I am.
No. One more point. A Nakba is not a historical event. A Nakba is a process which is continuing for 27,000 days. Killing Palestinians, taking their land, is not a historical story which started and finished a long time ago. It's happening every day. Anyone who doubts that, just look at Gaza. So therefore, the process of this crime is committed so far for 27,000 days. We are looking at an ongoing crime, and the answer is to stop it. It is not like a dot in history books, you can't revive it. You are looking at I just explained that ethnic cleansing in 1948 became genocide. So, in fact, this is a shame on the world which supports Israel that they allowed the crime to continue all this time. In any other situation, people will say, enough is enough, let us restore justice. But not only they did not do that, they supply them with bombs and political support and political protection, and they allowed the crime to continue. You are seeing a crime in process. And therefore, all of us, you, me, all of us, our duty is to try to stop this ongoing crime.
I can't help but think that you know, in this country we see the massacre and displacement of Native Americans as kind of a stain on our country. We're still dealing with that today. But when a very similar thing is happening today, it's not viewed the same way by a lot of people. I just couldn't help but think of the parallels between what white settlers did in America to the Native Americans and what's happening in Palestine.
But I think it's also a crime against them. But the difference is great, because I don't justify it, what happened here in the United States. But here you are talking about Palestine in the 20th century, when there is something called United Nations, something called international law, something called TV. I mean, it's not a dot in the far history, long time ago, where you could not do anything about it. But now you are looking at a crime, ongoing crime, and the two world courts condemned it. You are looking at a situation which in front of you, which is different from very bad historical crime long time ago done and finished. You're looking at the process going on. By the way, before I leave you, I have a Palestine poster map. I would be delighted to send you one or even 10 copies if you send me an address and send it by DHL. One of you can tell the others or whatever you like, but give me an address and the telephone number. I'll send it by DHL. Map of Palestine with all the villages, refugees, and all data in one sheet, 70 centimeters by 100. You can put it in your wall.
Thank you so much. That's so nice.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe Liz, you could send your address and you then talk to your friends.
Yeah, I will get them and then I can send them out to everyone.
All right. Okay. I'll send
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Fresh breath of good conscience. Keep going. Keep going. You're on the right track.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to say thank you again. I mean, I can't understate or overstate how much of like an honor this is to get to speak with you and pick both you and Rania's brains about your memoir and about Palestine and just really get to dig deep on this. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know you guys are busy and we are so grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, very much. I have hope in the future with people like you.
Oh, thank
Will be
you.
a
That's
better
so
way.
kind.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.